Imagine you haven't bathed in 3 weeks, not by choice. There's no river nearby, the well water is needed for drinking, and the nearest spring is a 2-day walk through territory you don't control. Your skin itches, your hair is matted with oil and dust, and it's not just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Open cuts from hunting or gathering are sitting there, unwashed, slowly turning into infections that, without antibiotics, can kill you in days. You don't have soap. You've never seen soap. Soap, as a manufactured bar you rub on your skin, is a relatively recent invention in the grand timeline of our species. And yet humans figured out how to survive, and often thrive, hygienically, for hundreds of thousands of years before anything resembling a soap bar existed. So how did they actually do it? Today, you step into a shower, squeeze a bottle, and in 90 seconds you're clean. You don't think about it. It's automatic. But for most of human history, getting clean was a genuine problem to solve, with real consequences for getting it wrong. Skin infections, parasites, and disease spread far more easily on unwashed bodies, and in a world without modern medicine, a minor skin infection could become the thing that killed you. So cleanliness wasn't vanity, it was survival infrastructure, and humans built that infrastructure with whatever the environment gave them. Here's the thing, soap, chemically speaking, isn't magic. It's a fat or oil combined with an alkaline substance, usually through a process called saponification, that creates a compound capable of binding to both water and oil, which lets it lift grease and dirt off skin and rinse it away. And it turns out several of soap's core ingredients, fat, ash, and water, were sitting around every human campsite on Earth for tens of thousands of years before anyone thought to combine them deliberately. The Ebers Papyrus, an Egyptian medical text from roughly 1500 BCE, describes combining animal and vegetable oils with alkaline salts to create a substance used for both washing and treating skin diseases. That's arguably the earliest documented soap-like recipe, but it wasn't the first form of cleansing technology humans used, not even close. Long before anyone was mixing oils with ash on purpose, humans were almost certainly doing something much simpler, scraping. Archaeologists have found bone and antler tools, some dating back tens of thousands of years, with wear patterns consistent with use as skin scrapers, similar to the strigil that Greek and Roman athletes would later use to scrape sweat, oil, and dirt off their bodies after exercise. The strigil itself, a curved metal tool, became standard equipment in Greek gymnasiums and Roman bathhouses starting around the 6th century BCE. Athletes would coat their skin in olive oil before competing or bathing, let the oil work into the pores and lift dirt and dead skin, and then scrape the whole mixture off with the strigil, oil, dirt, and sweat all in one motion. It sounds primitive, but it's mechanically similar to how modern oil cleansers work, the ones marketed today as revolutionary skincare science. Now here's where it gets interesting, because ash turns out to be one of the most important substances in the entire history of human hygiene, and almost nobody realizes it. Wood ash, when mixed with water, creates a mildly alkaline solution called lye water. That alkalinity is exactly what's needed to break down oils and fats, the same basic chemistry behind soap itself. Archaeological and ethnographic evidence from cultures across the world, from parts of Africa to the Americas to ancient Mesopotamia, show ash being used directly on skin and hair, sometimes as a paste, sometimes dissolved in water, specifically for cleaning. The earliest Sumerian clay tablets referencing something soap-like, dated to around 2800 BCE, describe a mixture of water, alkali, and cassia oil, boiled together, most likely used less for personal bathing and more for cleaning wool and textiles. But the underlying chemistry, ash plus fat plus water, is the exact same reaction that eventually gets refined into what we'd recognize as soap. And it wasn't just ash. Different environments produce completely different solutions to the same problem. And this is where the story gets genuinely global. In parts of Mesoamerica, the Aztecs used the root of a plant called amole, part of the agave and yucca family, which contains natural compounds called saponins. Saponins are chemically capable of producing a soapy lather when agitated in water, which is why they're literally named after soap. Crush the root, work it into water, and you get a foaming, cleansing liquid, entirely without any manufacturing process at all. It's not an approximation of soap. In a very real chemical sense, it functions as soap, straight out of the ground. In India, there's evidence going back thousands of years of using a paste made from ground legumes, often chickpea flour combined with turmeric and other natural exfoliants, a mixture still used today in some regions and known as ubtan. It's applied to the skin, left to dry slightly, and then scrubbed off, taking dirt, oil, and dead skin along with it. A method that predates soap manufacturing in the region by centuries and is still considered by dermatologists today to be a genuinely effective, gentle cleansing method. Meanwhile, in ancient China, historical texts describe the use of a substance called zaodu, made by grinding beans into a powder and combining them with natural fragrances and sometimes animal fats shaped into cakes and used similarly to how we'd use a bar of soap today, with written references dating back over 1,000 years. Different continents, no contact with each other, all converging independently on the same basic solution. Take something with natural cleansing or abrasive properties, combine it with water, and scrub. But cleaning your skin was only half the problem our ancestors had to solve. Hair was arguably worse because oil buildup in hair attracts far more debris and, historically, far more parasites, particularly lice, which were a near universal problem across almost every documented ancient civilization. Combs, some of the oldest man-made grooming tools we've ever found, date back over 5,000 years, with fine-toothed examples specifically designed for lice removal appearing in ancient Egyptian tombs. Cleopatra herself was reportedly known to use a mixture involving fermented substances for her hair, and Roman texts describe using a combination of goat fat and ash boiled together into a cleansing paste, applied directly to hair and scalp. Now, here's a detail that changes how you should think about all of this. Bathing frequency in the ancient world varied enormously depending on culture, climate, and social status. And the assumption that everyone before soap was just permanently filthy is actually wrong. The Romans, in particular, built an entire civilization partly organized around bathing. Public bathhouses, thermae, were massive social institutions, some capable of holding thousands of people at once, with elaborate systems of heated pools, cold plunges, and steam rooms. Romans didn't typically use soap the way we do today, at least not for most of their history. They relied primarily on the oil and strigil method, sometimes combined with pumice stone for scrubbing rough skin, particularly on the feet and elbows. Bathing was a daily, sometimes multiple times daily, ritual for people who could access a bathhouse, which in cities like Rome itself was most of the population, since public baths were often free or extremely cheap, subsidized specifically because cleanliness was understood even then to reduce disease. And that's really the through line here that most people miss entirely. Ancient civilizations weren't ignorant about the connection between cleanliness and health. They may not have understood germ theory the way we do now, but the empirical link between washing and staying healthier was observed and acted on repeatedly across cultures, often codified into religious or ritual practice specifically to make sure it happened consistently. Ritual washing appears in Hindu, Jewish, Islamic, and countless other religious traditions, often prescribed before meals, before prayer, or after specific types of contact, effectively building hygiene directly into daily religious obligation, which is a remarkably effective way to make sure an entire population keeps doing something beneficial without needing to explain the underlying microbiology. Now here's a period that surprises a lot of people because it seems to break the pattern entirely. Medieval Europe. There's a popular myth that medieval Europeans essentially stopped bathing altogether for centuries. And while it's true that bathing culture declined significantly compared to the Roman era, particularly as the elaborate infrastructure of Roman bathhouses fell into disrepair across the former empire, the idea that medieval people simply gave up on hygiene entirely is inaccurate. Medieval households commonly made a substance called lye soap at home, boiling animal fat with wood ash lye in large batches, a laborious, sometimes dangerous process since concentrated lye is caustic and can burn skin if handled improperly. This homemade soap was often harsh, and it wasn't necessarily used daily on the body the way we'd use soap today, but it was regularly used for washing hands, laundering clothes, and cleaning wounds. Public bathhouses did exist in many medieval European cities too, though their reputation shifted over time, sometimes becoming associated with other social activities beyond bathing, which contributed to religious and civic authorities eventually shutting many of them down, particularly following outbreaks of plague, when, ironically, communal bathing was blamed for spreading disease rather than preventing it. That plague era shift is actually one of the most interesting turns in this whole story, because it's a case where an actual hygiene practice got abandoned specifically because of a misunderstanding of disease transmission. During the Black Death in the 14th century, some physicians believed that hot water opened the pores of the skin and made the body more vulnerable to the disease-carrying bad air they believed caused plague. So instead of increasing bathing to combat disease, several European populations actually reduced it, sometimes replacing water-based washing with rubbing scented cloths or perfumes on the skin instead, under the theory that strong scents could ward off illness. It's a rare documented case in history where the wrong theory of disease actively made hygiene practices worse rather than better, and it took centuries, well into the 18th and 19th centuries, for bathing culture to fully recover in parts of Europe. So when you trace the full arc of this, a clear pattern emerges. Humans never had a single moment where hygiene was invented. Instead, it was solved independently, over and over again, by different cultures using whatever their local environment provided. Oil and a scraping tool in Greece and Rome, ash-based pastes across Mesopotamia and parts of Africa, saponin-rich plant roots in Mesoamerica, ground legume pastes in South Asia, bean-based cakes in China. Every one of these solutions arrived at the same underlying chemistry from a completely different direction, and every one of them worked well enough to keep entire civilizations functioning, healthy enough to build cities, fight wars, and raise children for thousands of years before a manufactured bar of soap ever touched human skin. So the next time you unwrap a bar of soap without a second thought, or squeeze a bottle of body wash in the shower, remember that you're using the ending point of a process that started with someone, somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, rubbing wood ash into their skin, or crushing a root into a river, or scraping oil off their arms with a sharpened piece of bone, trying to solve the exact same problem you solve every morning without thinking about it at all. The bar has changed, the bottle has changed, but the problem and the basic chemistry behind the solution has been sitting there, essentially unchanged, since long before anyone thought to write.